Today's episode of the podcast marks the start of a special two-part series I recorded covering the Wines and Spirits Show 2019. The show ran across 2 days in April 2019, and as the name would suggest, it brought together wine and spirits under one roof. My coverage focuses on 2 wine masterclasses from Friday the 12th of April, starting today with Coravin's Dare to Compare Challenge, and concludes next time with Patrick Schmidt, Editor-in-Chief of The Drinks Business. Back to today's episode, where Greg Lambrecht, Coravin founder, first takes us through the fascinating origin story of the Coravin device, before doing a deep dive into the Coravin, its uses, and some tips and tricks. Enjoy.
Well, thank you all for coming. It's like a 45-minute presentation on a screw pull, but serve nice wine as always, Michael. I'm a wine lover more than anything else. I don't work in the wine industry at all. I work in medicine. I invent new medical therapies. I started when I was 21 at Pfizer, where I was developing chemotherapy delivery systems for kids. I stayed in big industry developing new medical implants until about 1999. I worked in all areas of the body, OBGYN, urology, cardiology, general surgery, vascular, orthopedics, and then spine. I now do brand new medical companies. My current company is Intrinsic Therapeutics. We do spine surgery and spinal implants to improve the outcome of spine surgery. Coravin is a hobby that turned into a business. That'll make some sense. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a story behind it and where it came from. So cardiac stents, and one of the things I did, this is the very first thing I did. You'll notice there's a needle there. This is called the peripheral IV catheter. It was for Johnson & Johnson. It was called the Protective. And this, I think I made this in 1993. And this is my very first prototype of the Coravin, which was in 1999. It took me a long time to come up with this idea, but they're related. My belief is that inventions, having done this my whole life, don't come necessarily from a new technology most of the time. They come from a unique understanding of the unmet need. What is the problem? And it's having a unique understanding of that problem where once you say it in a slightly different way, the solution is obvious if you've got a general understanding of technology. So I'm a physicist. Out of MIT, also mechanical engineer in medicine, and none of that was wine, but I did fall in love with wine, and now my career is halfway in it. That was probably me when we founded the company, so that's me 6 years ago. I fell in love with wine when it was illegal for me to do so. I was 16 in the United States. I looked older. I had a full beard. At the time, my parents were Austrian. I didn't like schnapps. That's all they liked. So I had some friends. We were in Southern California, and they were like, you look older. We're going to drive up to Napa. You're the front man. You go in the door, and you pretend to be 21, and we'll follow in after you. Wonderful winery. It was his first year. I walk in. It's like a barn, and I'm nervous as hell. I open the door. I walk to his little tasting bar. He pours me a glass of Cabernet from his first vintage. I take my first sip, and it was awesome. All the beauty and power and complexity of a 1980s, that's how old I am, Cabernet from a new maker in California. And he looked at me and he goes, "What do you think?" I was like, "It's the best wine I've ever had." Of course, it was the first. And I completely forgot about my friends outside. He came out, he was pouring me everything. I was tasting across all of his stuff. My friends probably thought I'd been arrested. Until they finally peeked it and came in. I was like, right. I've been in love with wine ever since. I studied plasma physics. I was working in nuclear power and fusion power, which didn't wind up working out. Took me to Japan. Luckily, I came back, met my wonderful wife in grad school. And while I was biased toward California wine, her family came from Scotland. They had a long history of drinking wines from France. Her grandfather had collections of old Bordeaux, Burgundy, the Rhone. First time I had an Hermitage, just totally knocked me backwards. Nothing tasted like a grape, and I was smitten. So variety became interesting to both of us. We always argued with each other over what to open. My wife loves Northern Italian wines. I like them a lot, but I also like a Riesling or a white Burgundy every once in a while, so I was never drinking any of that. So I started to recognize we had conflict over what to open. I traveled a ton, so if I opened a bottle, I'd be gone for 2 weeks. I'd come back and the bottle was shot because she wasn't drinking that. She was drinking something else that would also be in the fridge going off because she worked a lot. But the problem really came to a head when she was pregnant with our second child. And she stopped drinking again. And now I had nobody. There was nobody to finish a bottle with. And I realized that the way that I consume wine was determined by its volume of sale. That the volume of the package, I drink it by the glass, but I have to commit to a $7.50. Even if I just want a glass. And if I wanted 2 glasses, the reason why I didn't have 2 different wines was because one of them was already open. There's that phrase, drink what's open. Oh, I'll just drink what's open. I wanted to drink what I wanted, not necessarily what was open. And I don't necessarily want to have 3 glasses of the same wine if my wife doesn't like that wine. I want to be able to have a glass of white, a glass of red, maybe a dessert wine or a port on a Wednesday. And not when I invite over all the right people that would make sense to open all of those bottles. And I remember writing things down. I knew I had an unmet need, and I just quit my job and was developing my first medical company. But I was sitting there with a bottle in my hand going, I need a way to extend the life of an open bottle of wine. I wrote that down. I'm like, that's not it. That's what VacuVin is. That's what all these spray cans are. And I'm still drinking that bottle until it's gone because I'm worried that they don't work. It's not like I'm going to open 6 bottles with that stuff. So I remember then writing, I need a way to be able to drink any wine from any bottle whenever I want, in any quantity I want, without ever having to think about when I'm going to drink from it again. I want there to be no hesitation at all. I want to be able to teleport a glass out of the bottle and into my glass. That's what I want to be able to do. And I remember writing down then a way to pour wine from a bottle without opening it. How can I do that? Well, I'd worked on chemotherapy delivery systems. I'd gotten really good. I developed a system which is used for chemotherapy, largely in kids with leukemia. It's a port that goes underneath the skin, and you stick it over and over again as they come in for repeated treatment over months. So I'd gotten really good at making needles that could go through things without doing damage to them. And I remember sitting in my kitchen now with that bottle and one of these chemotherapy needles going, there has got to be a way. I can use this to get wine out of that. So I tried what most physicians do. I stuck a needle through the cork, and I sucked it out with a syringe. And of course, you let go, and the syringe goes back because you create a vacuum. I was like, right, okay. I need to push it out of the bottle. I have to give it a reason to leave. So I'd worked in physics, and I knew about gases. And I thought I could just push it out of the bottle with a gas that's inert, that won't react with the wine. No air will get in. I'll pour the wine out, and that should be easy. That was 1999. That's my wife. That's me. That's the son my wife was pregnant with. And that's my older son. You can tell I'm the shorter one. They pat me on the head now. So it took me a long time to develop. I came up with the idea in 1999. I built a good prototype in 2003 that allowed me to change the needle that I was using, the gas that I was trying to push the wine out with, and the pressure of the gas that I was using in the bottle. I then spent 8 years between 2003 and 2011. I had a day job running medical companies. I spent 8 years testing. I did very much what we're going to do today. I'd buy a case of wine. I'd Coravin a glass out of the first bottle. And then 1 month later, I'd test it blind against the second bottle. And then I'd come back at 6 months, add a third bottle, blind taste again. And then 1 year, and then 2 years, and then 5 years later. And my thought was, if I can't tell the difference between a glass poured from a bottle that had been multiply poured from 5 years ago and one that I'm opening right now, I should have no hesitation to drink whatever I want. That was the thought. And I did the blind tasting like this. So we're going to go through that experience. But before I do, I wanted to show you how it worked. So I'll use my old version before our new version. Still great. It's got gas on the inside. Turned out, so I tried helium, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and argon. Helium was my children's favorite. Also did not work. It's lighter than air, so it rushes back out of the bottle and sucks air in. But it was funny. Carbon dioxide and nitrogen, unfortunately, both dissolve in a fluid. So Guinness is nitrogenated, and most other beers are carbonated. So I didn't want anything dissolving in my wine, and that failed pretty quickly. Argon is like helium. It's the first noble gas that's heavier than oxygen. So argon's got all sorts of uses. Because it has no smell, it has no taste. It's used with food. Actually, wine is bottled under argon when they're in the bottling lines quite frequently. It's 1% of the air we breathe. We get it by freezing the air. And it's the stuff at the top because it doesn't freeze. Because noble gases don't freeze. So there's argon in here. It's the little cup you thread on, thread off. Here's that needle, not the chemotherapy one. This is a spinal needle. If you've ever had an epidural, it's like that, but a little smaller. And the needle is closed at the end, like a pencil. The holes are on the side, so it pierces and dilates the cork without removing any material. And because the cork is elastic, it recloses. So it goes on top. This is the trigger for the gas, you'll hear. I press the needle through the cork, tip it sideways, press the trigger, gas goes in, and every time I let go, wine comes out. So when I'm pushing the trigger, argon gas is going into the bottle, and that argon is pushing the wine out of the bottle into my glass so that no air gets in while I'm pouring. Stop any time just by tipping up, pull the needle out, and take it off. So I go through the foil, I go through wax. I'm lazy, wanted to be able to go through anything. And because cork's elastic, it reseals. And put this back in your shelf and drink it again later. So that's the basic idea of what Coravin is. So you can drink 3-4 different wines in a night, doesn't matter, as long as it works. So you saw the insert, tip and pour. That's really how it works. It's not terribly complicated. We've come up with our latest version, which is more digital. So 2011, I founded the company. 2013, we launched in the United States. 2014, we launched here in London, our first European city. We built a headquarters in Amsterdam soon after that. And we went to Asia Pacific. We have a headquarters in Hong Kong. And then we launched a variety of different colors. Adapters, people always said, well, it doesn't work with screw cap. How am I going to drink my Australian wine? And so developed a Coravin screw cap, which I'll show in just a sec. People said, how do I aerate my wine? How do I decant my wine? So we developed the Coravin aerator. So we've got a whole list of stuff that we evolved around this system so you can drink your wine by the glass. And then last year, we're used in restaurants, wine bars, etc. We wanted to develop something that was really training, didn't require any training. So this is the Coravin Model 11. Has no clamp, has no trigger. My goal when I founded the company was faster, easier, and more fun than opening a bottle, still or sparkling, independent of closure. Don't yet work with sparkling, so wait for that. My wife drinks a lot of champagne now. I'm going broke. So, and it's really good stuff. So I'll show the Model 11 later. We'll do the blind tasting first. Why not? Well, we're in 70 countries now. Pretty much anyone who likes wine, we're there. The way that once I launched Coravin, I wanted to validate that it worked. So I went around to winemakers around the world using their wines and sampling. We would Coravin bottles together, leave it in their cellars, come back 3 months, 6 months, a year later, 3 years later. That's what Patrick was talking about before some of you guys came in. This is Burgundy, and all the Burgundy producers wrapped around the table with their wines out a year. And that's Thibault de Gervillers, Madame Mounieret. Madame Leflaive was in there somewhere, and she scared the pants off of me because we were serving her wine, which is really delicate. And Monsieur Lafarge, I think, is actually over here, 80-year-old guy. We're a year in, and in the middle of the tasting, as they're all very carefully tasting across their 4 glasses, he looks up at me while I'm sweating, and he goes, and they couldn't guess, which was great. So wineries use us. The Burgundy wine producers, almost all of them, use Coravin to sample wine to their guests. Robert Parker, that was scary too. He's got a really great palate. These are the masters of wine at Otto's here in London, blind tasting their wines. This is Ceretto in Italy. This is obviously Chateau Latour. I'll bring them up again later. Tough nut to crack. These are the Germans. It's a tool. They're fun to work with. So we've been all over the place, and we're tested by critics, used by educators, people that are studying wine, because you can taste 12 different wines in an evening at home. Restaurants use us for anything by the glass. Some wine stores allow you to try before you buy, now with Coravin, because they're not opening it. I really wanted to change the way that wine is served and sold. I still pull corks on bottles when it makes sense, but it's pretty rare. More often I'm serving like 10 times the number of wines to friends, because the variety is what's so interesting about wine. It's been a crazy few years, so now you get to drink wine. Coravin blind tasting. This is what we are doing. You have 4 glasses in front of you of the very same wine. It's this Hospice de Beaune. We bought a barrel back in 2016 of Volnay. So you got 16 Volnay in your glasses, 4 glasses. At least one of those glasses, and as many as 3, are from a bottle like this that was Coravin back in February 19th of this year. So it's 2 months ago-ish. And the rest of your glasses are from a control bottle from the same case. So your job in this tasting is to smell and taste and look across the 4 glasses and decide which glass or glasses you think came from the bottle that was first Coravined 2 months ago. Do you get that? Awesome. Give it a shot. We'll go for 5 or 7 minutes. If it's obvious, you'll know. You can write down on the Dare to Compare thing that's next to you. I've got a set of 4 up here. And no cheating with your neighbor. I'd like to have as many independent guesses as possible, because this is going into my data bank. I'm still a geek. So this is a Burgundy. It's a Pinot Noir from Volnay, town of Volnay. And it's part of the Hospice de Beaune, which is the charitable auction that happens every year in Burgundy, where you can buy a barrel for an exorbitant amount of money to help support the hospital that has been in Beaune for hundreds of years, 800-900 years. Very, very old building. So it's a Pinot Noir from Burgundy. All right, you guys pretty much ready? Do enjoy the wine while I'm talking. So I always ask 3 questions before we get into the results. The first question is, are any of the wines in front of you clearly oxidized, like they've been open for a few days or a week? Thank you. Are any of the wines unservable to a guest or a friend? Maybe? No? And are there any differences between the glasses that you think would be greater than the differences between any 2 bottles of the same wine? Bottles vary from bottle to bottle variability. No? Then we have already won. Now it's just a game. Because if it's servable, and if there's no difference from bottle to bottle variability, and they're not oxidized, this is out 2 months. It's not a short period of time. And I've done this out to 5 years, 3 years with Madame Leflaive, in her own wine. So I have never had a different answer. So we have done more than 1,200 sets of wines over the last series of years, and not a single response that has been, yes, that's clearly oxidized, yes. So we're in the clear. You need to store the wine well, so keep it on its side of the cold if you want it to last. But if you do that, the wine should be as good as this. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask, I'm going to go and just ask for a raising of hands. There's 38 of you. If you can raise your hand if you think glass number 1 is from a bottle that was poured by Coravin 2 months ago. Who thinks glass number 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Who thinks glass number 2 is from the Coravin bottle? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Who thinks glass number 3 is from the Coravin bottle? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yipers. Who thinks glass number 4 is from the Coravin bottle? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13. So it's a relatively even spread across the glasses. That is also quite commonly the case. So the answer to the question is, ready? Glasses 1 and 4. Really? I promise. I promise. Did anybody, there's a 1 in 14 random chance, so at least 2 of you should have gotten this right. Did anybody guess only glasses 1 and 4? Or Coravin. Only glasses 1 and 4. 2. Bullseye! So that answer, 2 of 38, is slightly less than random. Because it's, right? There's 38 of you, could have been one more. So there, at the end of that test, I was in Paris, and it was all the top sommelier of Paris. We were at a year, and we were at Mark Williamson's wine bar, Willie's Wine Bar. If you ever get a chance to go, it's fantastic. And it was in the middle of the tasting. We were like a minute or 2 into the tasting, and Mark Williamson, who's taking part in the test, is going like this. And I'm sitting there, I go, Mark, what are you doing? And he goes, they're all the same to me. So there is a tradition in, it also helps with cleanup, in our blind tasting that is the Mark Williamson. If you got it wrong, please eventually pour all of your glasses into one and go enjoy that glass, because it's all the same to you. I also get this wrong, which is, shouldn't be embarrassing. It just means the technology works. If you got it right, you can proudly leave your glasses out. So number 1, if you're using older wines, and I do like older wines, a master of wine taught me this. Put your hand on top, put your thumb on the cork, and press down. If the cork slides, don't use Coravin. If it does slide, drink it as fast as you possibly can. That's what he said. He's like, it's a race. Call a friend, open it up, and start drinking. We made 3 different needle sizes. So I like vintage wines, and so I made a vintage needle. This is our standard needle, or fast flow actually. Coravin comes with the standard needle. They're easy to change. Just unscrew, take it out, like that, and you can put a new one in and place it in here. So we have 3. It comes with a standard. I've used that on everything going back into the 80s. I've even used it in the 60s if the cork is rock hard. Vintage needle, I've Coravin stuff going back into the 19th century. So we made a super thin needle you can push through a cork with a finger. It takes longer for the wine to pour, but if the wine took 60 years to get here, you can wait 20 seconds for a glass. And then we made a fast flow for wine bars, because they want to be able to pour fast, quickly with better wines. So they're each individually available, and they also come in a set. They're not that expensive. The needles last a long time. They're Teflon coated to get it through the cork very easily, but the Teflon wears off after somewhere between 500 and 1,000 uses. You can get it to last longer if you cut the foil. The metal scratches the needle, so cutting the foil helps extend the life of the needle, but they last a really long time. The other questions I get asked are sediment. Sediment is trickier. We're trying to figure out a way to really do fining, because we do take the bottle and tip it back up. So what I've seen restaurants do is they store the wine on the side, and then they brought back the basket. So they put it into the basket. They take the Coravin, place it on, press through, tip very slightly, pour, tip it back up, pull the needle out. So the bottle barely moves. I don't have a basket in my house, but I've got a wine rack, and I just leave it in the rack and Coravin it right there. It takes a little bit of practice, but the bottle doesn't move. And vintage port, which I like, has a lot of sediment, so you don't want to stir it up too much, so don't go vertical to horizontal. But other than that, it works pretty well. I'm bad at computers, which you'll see. I have my sons that are really good at it. So this is my favorite. I went to Chateau Latour and showed them the Coravin. They grabbed it and said, how did you test it? I told them the whole testing strategy. And then they came and said, we'll do a chemical test. You can leave now. And they poured it into a machine, the Foss machine, and they took 6 bottles of Chateau Latour 11, and they checked the chemical compounds of the wine. This is bottle number 1, bottle 2, bottle 3, bottle 4, bottle 5. Every month they opened up a new bottle and Coravin the first bottle again, and they saw how it changed over time and whether it was within bottle-to-bottle variability. And they showed that bottle-to-bottle variability was greater than its change over time, which was really cool. And then they invited me back, and I got to stay for 3 hours drinking through their all their wines. Drinking out of the barrel in Chateau Latour is one of my top moments of all time. So a couple of things on Coravin. It changes the way you drink wine. I do pairings at home now. Restaurants can do pairings really easily. I see a lot of really high-end pairings that are happening with Coravin. Variety is the key for me. Coravin, cor is the Latin root for heart, and vin is wine. For me, Coravin means getting at the heart of wine, which is the variety. It's why it's so deeply fascinating, is that it changes every year. There's 2,000 grapes in Italy. There's 140,000 bottlings every year. It's going to take a long time to drink it all. And I can explore faster, learn faster. And then no compromise is the big thing. How to treat it well to get the best results. First, clean it. It is like a wine glass, not a corkscrew. Wine flowed through here. And so at the end of an evening, if you've used it, hot water through here cleans out the needle and the valve. Otherwise, yeast or bacteria can grow inside. You don't want that. If you have a Coravin and you've never washed it, you can look guilty right now, and that's okay. Pour vodka through here and kill anything that's living on the inside, and then wash it from there on out. Clearing, if I go from a red to a white, it's good to press the trigger quickly. Pushes all that red wine out of the needle, so I don't inject it into the next. Anytime I'm about to go on to another bottle, I press the trigger very quickly, just to clear it of any wine that might be inside. And cellar, store it on its side in the cold. Even screw cap. This is our whole range. We have Model 1, which is our entry, Model 2, Model 2 Elite, which is all sorts of colors. The gas capsules pour about 15 full glasses of wine. They'll pour about 40 of those, 30 or 40 of those. We have screw caps. This is how it works. Not terribly complicated. So just crack the bottle open. The gases on top of a wine are heavier than air. Place our screw cap on top. Almost nothing gets in. And then you can treat this just as if it was a cork. Like so. And pull it out, reseals. So put this in your cellar. It'll last at least 3 months. I've actually done blind tastings out to 1.5 years now. If you store them on their side in the cold, works really well. These are reusable. So when you're done with the bottle, just wash it, take it off, wash it, put it on the next one. And they're really cheap. And then we have an aerator, which allows you to aerate young wines. So we don't, this is actually kind of a cool thing, we don't pour with gravity. Aeration is time and surface area. So if you want to aerate the wine, you either need to leave it out for a long time or dramatically increase its surface area. Welcome to the Coravin wine shower. We break the wine up into white. Lots of streams. Sorry, you've got to have one failure per test. Sorry about that. We break it up into lots of streams. The streams become droplets. The droplets increase the surface area by a factor of 1,000. So it's the equivalent of an hour in your glass. Come by our table. We'll pour you 2 wines side by side. See what you think. And then the last thing that we developed was the Model 11. And so what we wanted was something that was faster, easier, and more fun than opening a bottle that takes no training. So no clamp, no trigger, no Greg disasters. I try to embarrass myself at least once every day. So the way that it works, you pick it up, turns blue, it knows it's awake. You can set it to a glass or a taste. And then you can set the volume of a glass or a taste on your phone. You just take it, press it onto the bottle, tip it sideways, it pours itself. So it's literally faster than opening a bottle. And I can stop anytime just by tipping up. Grab it, pull it off. So pretty fast and easy. Normally for the restaurants and wine bars that want to make service really easy, you can pour one-handed across the table. So I'm going to work through, that's the 11. It comes with an app that controls the flow on your phone of taste and pour. It also allows you to do all sorts of other things, track your cellar, does fun pairings, because we were trying to have fun. You can pair your wine with David Bowie. You can pair it with a book or a movie. You can pair it with food. You can pair it with friends. All sorts of things. And we try to keep track of what pairings people like. So we won't know about your friends, but the music for sure. Certain wines go better with different music. The big thing that London has done for us is develop the trade. There is no greater usage of Coravin in restaurants than here in London, worldwide. We started in the US, but London really took off. There's more better wine being served here, and it's incredible, the creativity. This is the most common, and when we started in 2850, 5 whites, 5 reds, some dessert wines. These are some of the wine lists where people are serving by the glass, by the taste, by the glass. Some people are doing it by the half bottle, by the quarter bottle, all using Coravin. And it's the greater variety and the greater quality of wine that they're able to serve by the glass because they're not worried about wastage. So London's really taught the rest of the world how to use it in the restaurant. These are some of them. 67 Pall Mall is the craziest. 800 wines by the glass. It's nuts. It's the wine mecca for wine geeks. I love that place and the people that are there. But all these places are great. Pollen Street Social, where I was served a glass, and if I guessed it right, it was free. They have 5. Only 5. You only need 1 per sommelier. Right? They just walk around with it in Coravin a bottle, take it out. They clean it at the end of day. So what you do in between is you just carry around a napkin and puff out. So the average restaurant has 1 or 2 max. So it really doesn't take much to have a wine by the glass list.
When you order a glass of wine, you wonder how long that bottle has been opened and how much left in it, I must admit.
Right? And my big problem, I thought of Coravin from me on out. Like I wanted to be able to drink whatever I wanted at home. I wanted to order whatever I wanted at a restaurant, and I wanted to be able to taste before I buy it at a wine store. And I had the same problem. If you buy a really nice bottle, you split it with a friend, now you want 1 more glass. You have to take a big drop down in quality because that's what they were willing to throw away at the end of the day. And if they had an expensive wine, you wondered who was the last nutcase that ordered this and when was that? The more expensive it gets, the more you're like, So with Coravin, it doesn't matter. No wastage. Yeah, it's really had a big change. We're all over the world as well. One cool program I saw in California spread to Australia, and that's everything on the list by the half bottle or the full bottle. So they literally just, their entire wine list, half bottle, full bottle, and the price is divided by 2. And if you order a half bottle, they'll Coravin the first half into a decanter, leave the bottle on the table so you can see it. And then the person who orders the second half, they pull the cork, pour that into a decanter, and walk away. So it's a really cool way of serving wine that started in California but really took off in Australia, Melbourne in particular. I couldn't agree more. I got a pile of Magnums at home. I never bought Magnums before Coravin. Now I buy it and Coravin through all the time. I don't care what the format is. It goes up to a Magnum. I'm trying to make it work on 3 liter. And I made one for Jean-Marc Rouleau that goes to 6 liter. Because he was sending, so Chateau Margaux uses Coravin to sample all their wines before they send it to an event. They used to send multiple bottles because of cork taint, the risk of cork taint. Now they sample them all and only send the good bottles. And Jean-Marc Rouleau was doing that, and he's like, you send a bad 9 liter, that's a really bad thing. And what am I going to do, send 3 9 liters? No way. So I had to make him one. And there's wine sitting in his cellar for me when in exchange. I haven't picked it up yet. Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much to Greg for sharing your fascinating story with us on the day. It was also a real pleasure to take part in the tasting test myself. I've left below details of Coravin's website and social media handles on Instagram. And of course, do follow along with me on social media. I'm at Interpreting Wine on Instagram and Facebook, at Wine Podcast on Twitter, and email hello@interpretingwine.com. Please do tune in next time, episode 260, for Patrick Schmidt, MW, and Drinks Trends of the Century. And if you're not already, why not subscribe wherever you're listening so that you don't miss out on Patrick's episode or future content. See you next time.